Hey, KU fans, welcome back to another episode of the KU Sports Hour here at KUsports.com with Shane Jackson and Benton Smith. I'm Matt, no introduction Tate today. We're just going to get right into it. So what did you guys think about that Kansas basketball game the other day, huh?
Oh, boy. That was
That's
alarming.
the best I could do. That's the best I can do. If I do anything other than that, you're going to get some long, drawn-out intro about Shane's email address.
For 10 minutes about Twitter handles.
Or the Ravens.
So good idea to just hop right in there.
That's right. Well, we are going to hop right in there. It's a bye week for football. Good thing, because there wasn't a whole lot to talk about after that dismantling at the hands of the Wildcats.
We kind of talked about it all in our coverage Saturday and Sunday.
That was good enough. What a disappointment that was. Man. So good to get some distance between that and, the next game. They've still got 3 games to figure out how they want to finish this season, how they want to leave the impression of what Les Miles' year one was. And I kind of talked about that after that K-State loss. We've been so keen on evaluating the Les Miles inaugural year as we go, right? But really, for my money, the best thing to do is just let it all play out. You have to analyze the games and decisions and things like that. But in terms of really putting a stamp on what was this? What was year one under Les Miles? Was it a success? Was it a failure? Was it somewhere in between? In terms of doing that, it really is best to just let it finish and then look back on it and maybe make those evaluations. So
maybe we should just reevaluate how we cover this. Maybe we have one story before the season, one story after the season.
Yeah,
we have a podcast before the season,
and we just get a keg at the games.
Yeah, we're just
we're
just hammered drunk at football games.
Yeah,
and then a few months later, when it's all over, we come and tell you what happened.
Okay, so think about it. All the money you spend on traveling could just go to that keg and that suite. Because I know you, man. I've seen your credit card bills. You are high rolling. Me, on the other hand, Super 8s all day.
Oh, for sure.
All day.
Yeah.
I just stayed at a Super 8 in New York City, as a matter of fact.
Did you really?
Yeah, it was great.
I don't believe you.
You're right. All right, let's talk about New York City, though. But anyway, real quick, to kind of tap off that football thing, Shane, you agree? You think that's fair to kind of just, hey, let's look at this thing at the end of it. Again, I like that, you break everything down as it goes because that's a big part of it. But in terms of putting a full, this was what year one was, it seems like that's not going to happen until December, January, maybe even, next spring when you're looking ahead to year 2.
Especially with football because it's such a week-to-week sport. You only get 12 games, and you just tend to overreact to one game. So, I do think that is the best way. Obviously, you can look at things in kind of stretches and say, okay, this is when KU had momentum, this is when they let it go, stuff like that. But, when you're talking about the overall is Les Miles' first-year success, that obviously comes down to the end of the year because it doesn't matter how many wins he has in the first 6 games. If you lose the final 6 games, it might be a failure.
Right, yeah. And I'm looking forward to doing that, to be honest with you. I think it's been a fun season. It's been a fun year to cover. I was in New York at the Champions Classic, and I ran into Jeff Long and was before the game and was talking to him about it. And, I said, Jeff, it's November, and I'm still paying attention to football just as much as I'm paying attention to basketball. And it's been a long time since that's been true. And, he didn't do a backflip or anything, but you could tell. I don't know if he can do a backflip. He might be able to do a backflip. You're right. He might. But you could tell that even just coming from someone as simple as me, that's what he wants to hear. He wants to hear that people, not just media, not just fans, not just families, but people in general.
You'd probably rather hear it from fans because, it is kind of part of your job to pay attention.
Kind of. Well, last couple years it wasn't. That's for sure. Shout out David Beatty. But no, you're right. He'd probably rather hear it from fans. But he did hear it from fans. There were 47,000 fans there. And real quick before we move on to the KU Duke stuff in New York City, I kind of got into I wouldn't call it a debate necessarily because I don't even think I had a rebuttal, but there was a lot of talk about the fan split at Memorial Stadium for the Sunflower Showdown. And, I was there, sat in the press box, took a quick glimpse around. Obviously, we don't see underneath us as well as we see the west side or the east side. There's a lot of purple over there. I put it at about 70-30 KU, and I still feel pretty good about that. I saw quite a few people agree that was pretty close. But I also had a few people say, you're crazy. It was way more KU fans than that.
Really?
Yeah, I didn't.
I would have put it a cap at 70%.
Okay. Yeah, that's how I felt.
I thought it was more like 2/3 KU, a third K-State.
Did you? Okay.
Yeah, but I mean, it's so hard.
It is so hard
to figure that out. But
well,
it was in that range. I thought 66% to 70% KU fans.
Yeah, I wanted to go 75-25, but I just didn't feel that was right. For every 4 fans, 3 of them are KU. That didn't seem right to me.
Right.
But it was close. I mean, Shane, you agree? I mean, you were there. You had your eyes open.
100% KU. Yeah, that sounds about right. I mean, just using my eyeballs, it looked like there was more KU fans.
Sure.
I mean, double more.
Oh,
KU
boy,
fans.
here he goes with the math.
Let's go. Yeah, more than double more. There you go.
Wow, that's strong. Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, and the whole point of talking about it is you can say Memorial Stadium sold out. You can say it was full. But if it's full of 50% Nebraska red or K-State purple, that doesn't matter. This wasn't that, though. I mean, this was legitimately more KU fans filled that stadium, and you know, if you do the math on that and you take 70% of the total, it's funny because it's about 34,000 or so, which is about what they've been drawing all year. So then you throw in another 13 or so for K-State.
We're doing a lot of heavy math.
I know
here.
Someone did this though in my Twitter debate, and that was their point. They were like, "You really think it was just the same amount of KU fans that have been there all year?" And I get the point. I do see that the romantic vision of this thing is more KU fans showed up. It was the Sunflower Showdown. But when you do the math, maybe not.
No, exactly. I do agree with that. Like if it wasn't against K-State, it would not have been a sellout.
For sure.
I mean, it just even though people were excited based on the previous 2 weeks, I think that we saw even after KU played great at Texas, that Texas Tech game, that wasn't a great crowd.
Good point.
It kind of filled out as the game went on, and it was competitive because I was talking about this with Joe Deneen recently. Like that's how it can work out sometimes. Like the stadium is basically empty, and like it's actually turns out to be competitive. And you notice by the second quarter or third quarter, there's way more fans.
Sure,
that's a weird dynamic.
There was a game where one of the Beatty wins. It might have been Texas. Is that the only team he beat? Did he beat West Virginia once?
I'm trying to remember.
It's hard.
So.
Shouldn't be hard.
Yeah,
only a few. But it must have been the Texas win.
Okay.
Where
a night game.
Yeah, exactly.
People were like, oh.
I heard from several people that were like on campus or nearby that were like just doing their Saturday thing, partying, getting their game face ready for the night, and they look at the score, they're watching on TV or whatever it was on their phones, and they're like, "Oh, we got to get up there, man. We can storm the field," and they did, and all of a sudden a game that started with a freaking 90-yard Texas touchdown run and no one in the stands ended with K-State or KU fans rushing the field. Like, what? Weird stuff. So anyway, it was cool to see, whether it was 100% KU fans or really cool 70-30 or whatever it was. It was cool to see, and there is no doubt, man, that place it looks better full. It plays better full. It feels better full. And unfortunately, the Jayhawks didn't live up to that. And you wrote a lot about that. I mean, your game coverage was kind of about that. Your follow was absolutely about that, how these players felt like they just totally let that get away. I mean, they had all these people there ready to support them, and they blew it.
Yeah, I mean, Andrew Parchment basically said, we have to prove to them that they are investing their time well and coming to see us play. You know, we have to prove to them and give them reasons to come back and watch us.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see if they do. Oklahoma State next week, a week from Saturday, and then
at Iowa State. 2
tough road games. We'll get into that next week.
Yeah, for sure.
Les Miles has been hit or miss on the road. Some good, some bad. And then they come home to finish it off with Baylor November 30th. Is that right?
Yeah, basically Thanksgiving weekend.
There you go. Yeah. There you go. So be thankful. Be thankful we spent 9 minutes talking on KU football on a bye week, though. I mean, that's really what it comes down to. There's a bye week, and we just dove into KU football. This wouldn't have
happened in past years.
No, it wouldn't have. And it might not have happened if KU had scored 3 more points against Duke.
Oh, yeah.
Or given up 3 less or something like that.
Or maybe not turn the ball over 14 as many times. Maybe they just had 14 turnovers.
Honestly, if they just would have 27 instead of 28, they probably would have won. I mean, it was something to see. I have played in games that looked less sloppy.
Ouch.
Yeah, I mean, true story. True story. That is not embellishment. That is factual. Now, maybe not the entire time, and maybe not because of me, but nonetheless, it was mind blowing to be there. You guys watched, obviously. It was mind blowing to see, especially. I mean, what I just couldn't get over was Devon Dotson and Ochai Agbaji were two of the biggest culprits. I mean, they almost had half of KU's turnovers, just the two of them. And that is not what you expect. I understand some of the excuses around the turnovers, but I don't know that you can say that okay, well, it was just, their first game of the year and all that. I mean, there are millions of excuses, but for those two guys to do it that way, and with Ochai especially, at least 2 or 3 of his were in transition where he's out running with the ball. I mean, that is where you want him, right? I mean, that is the prime spot for that guy. I mean, he knows what to do, how to get to the rim, in transition, in space, things like that. And for him to look a little bit lost and make bad decisions with the ball, those were the two most shocking things to me, was that those two guys struggled so much to take care of the ball. But in general, I mean, it was like a movie. It didn't seem real watching them, especially in that first half. I mean, 18 turnovers in a half is mind-blowing. And to be in the game still is incredible against a team that good. And I don't know. I was there. It was hard to watch. I would imagine it looked maybe even worse on television because we were under the basket, that looked pretty bad when it was coming at us. But on the other end, you couldn't really see how bad the passes were or whatever. You could definitely see.
Did you get a good look at some travels?
Plenty. Courtesy Udoka Azubuike. Travelers Insurance, the new spokesperson. He's getting his leg up on the likeness and image stuff that's coming. He can be their spokesperson soon. So, yeah, I mean, he traveled on back-to-back possessions, I think, right? And it was just, or close to it. It was just, they were just, again, I get it. The excuses are there. They're legitimate. First game, huge stage, tough opponent, all that stuff played into it. But, at the end of the day, Self said it best. It's inexcusable. You can't just say, well, oh well. I mean, they have to now. They have to move on. But at the same time, it's hard to believe that happened. What do you guys think?
Well, I mean, when you mentioned Ochai and his issues, did he have more turnovers in the second half? I feel like he got a little more hurried up in the second half, maybe. I might be misremembering, but I thought he had a better game than anybody on the team.
100%.
I mean, obviously you can't say this caveat of like, well, just don't look at the turnovers and look at everything else he did. But I just thought like the way he played all around was great. I mean, he looked comfortable in transition. Was able to knock down a 3. I mean, I think he had 4 steals, right?
Yeah. He
did everything well except for turning the ball over, being a little loose with it there. But I don't know. I wonder how much of that is just like once somebody kind of gets it headed that direction, does it become contagious where guys are just like, I don't know, just thinking too much about what they're doing and trying to be too careful, or I don't know.
It's possible. I mean, and look, I think the most significant thing that happened was Duke's defense. I mean, I barely wrote about that in my game story, which I regretted, but deadline's a mother. So, there just wasn't time. But I mean, to say that KU was just kicking the ball all over the place and shouldn't have done that is a little simplistic for me. I mean, I think Duke pressured them maybe like no team will see all year. I mean, they were in passing lanes. They had ball pressure. I mean, they pressured the post. They trapped the post. I mean, their defense was sensational, really. Their game plan was sensational. And for Kansas to almost win that game, even with the turnovers and even with Duke's intense defense, is a good sign for sure. I get the silver lining part of that. But I think that's a big part of it. It's real easy to just, hammer away and say this shouldn't happen or that shouldn't happen. But Duke decided some of it was going to happen. They forced a lot of it to happen. So, one thing I'm looking at too, I was checking on you, and Ochai did have 4 steals with 5 turnovers and 2 assists. But one thing that I hadn't thought of until right now, or maybe 2 minutes ago, is you look at the numbers. Dotson and Ochai played over 38 minutes each. There's they have not played that much in a game with that kind of intensity, that kind of pressure, those kind of stakes in months. Maybe if they could have just played 33, 34 minutes, some of those turnovers might not have been there. I mean, fatigue factors in, and there's no doubt that when guys are tired, they make bad decisions. They don't make the same plays they would. And, 3 or 4 minutes doesn't sound like much, but Dotson sat a minute 48 of game time.
Right.
I mean, and that's get used to it, right? I mean, that's how it's going to be because Marcus Garrett played 36 minutes, and there's your backup point guard. So it's not like he can play a whole lot more. But yeah, I think maybe that's a factor. I think that's something that was a little bit overlooked, and the idea here that KU's pretty deep is true. But when you have Isaiah Moss who can't play, and you have 3 freshmen who haven't played, it's harder to go to them in a game like that. Now I think we'll see something different Friday, and I think we'll see something different over the next couple of weeks. I don't think those guys will have to play 38 minutes, but I do think that was probably at least part of the turnover puzzle, and it was puzzling, that's for sure. Shane, what jumped out at you about KU's giveaways?
I remember at some point in the second half, Ochai had a transition. It was 2-on-1, and he gave it up really late, but still ended up in a layup. And Jay Billis was on him in the broadcast saying he gave up too late. And a few minutes later, it was a similar situation and ended up being a turnover because he was late to it. And I think there just might be some truth that this team is struggling in transition. Now, some of it could be season opener, some of it could be Duke. But I think back to last year, there was a situation where KU had 5-on-1 against Iowa State and Hilton Coliseum and ended up in a turnover.
Look at you. So,
I think there's just truth that this team might struggle in transition at times. They may make the wrong decisions, and maybe they're not built for that. I mean, obviously, I don't want to make this one game sample size assumption, but I think there might be some truth between Dotson and Ochai. Maybe there's some miscues when this team tries to push it out. I mean, they still had, 17 points, fast break, so maybe that's not it. But, I mean, it seems like that was an issue at times last year as well.
Yeah, and this is a new team, too. I mean, half of this game, or well over half of this game, you had, McCormack and Azubuike out there. That's not your best transition lineup, So, and Duke got back. I mean, flat out. Cassius Stanley, man, I mean, if you were wondering why KU recruited him so hard, you're not wondering anymore. I mean, that guy was sensational in this one. And he did it on 6 shots. I mean, I can't imagine a guy impacting a game so much in 6 shots. I mean, he was just 2 of them were dunks, and 1 was a huge 3-pointer, and all 3 of them brought the roof off the place. And he played 30 minutes, and for my money, he was way better than Matt Hurt was. And Matt Hurt was a much, much, much more heralded recruit. But they were both good, and you can see why KU wanted both of them. We'll get into this a little bit more here in a second, but I think we need to keep talking turnovers. But I think that if you look at Matt Hurt and how he plays, Benton, you wrote a column about this yesterday a little bit anyway, the bigs and just what they can do there. When you think about the ideal 4-man in the modern-day Bill Self system, not the old school, high-low stuff.
The Morris twins.
Yeah, right. When you think about the ideal 4 in Bill Self's current lineups, who comes to mind?
Oh, I mean, Josh Jackson.
There's one. Yeah, Perry Ellis to me. Yeah. I mean, Perry Ellis, his first 2 years was more of a, hey, I'm going to stay down in the paint and do what I do and use my feet and bang around and all that. But then by his senior year, they realized, well, he can move a little bit. We can get him out on the perimeter. He can attack. He can hit that high post, face up, and create. And really, even Dedrick Lawson, not near the athlete of either of those 2 guys.
Right.
But because he was such a good passer, because he had such good vision, that was a guy you could throw the ball to right there, and he could turn and face, and he could hit the jumper. He could pass out of there really well. I mean, he just had such a command of that spot. That is where Matt Hurt would have played for this team, and I think there's no doubt in my mind that Matt Hurt would have started on this team. I think you have Silvio and McCormack coming off the bench if Matt Hurt picked Kansas, and he would start next to Udoka, and it would have looked so much better. They're going to figure this out. There's time. They have the pieces, and they have a damn good coaching staff, so they're going to figure this out. But it's probably not there for McCormack or Silvio to be that guy. So what it's going to be is not going to be what you've seen with Josh Jackson, Perry Ellis, what you would see with Matt Hurt. You're going to have to see something new. They're going to find a different wrinkle. It's going to have to be, something that we haven't seen. But I just that really jumped out to me. It's just like That's what they're missing, man. A guy that they can, even if he's not a 20-a-game scorer, 20 and 10 type of power forward, just a guy who you can run things through, who's got the skill set to play that spot and facilitate everything that comes after it. Because that was really glaring in this one. I mean, they tried to put McCormack there, they tried to put Silvio there, and they just can't do it. It's not a knock. They're just that's not their game.
Yeah, and this is obviously what I wrote about the other day, but basically, like, you also can't trust those guys to defend on the perimeter, and so many college basketball teams now have in that 4 spot a guy who plays outside. Maybe he's not even like a stretch forward. Maybe he's an old school small forward who teams just run those at 4 now.
I mean, that's Josh Jackson.
Yeah, and that's why Josh Jackson is ideal, because he could defend on the perimeter, or he could defend anywhere. But I mean, you need a guy who's versatile. But you make obviously very valid points about the need on offense too, just to have some flow to what you're doing. And it looked a little, I don't know, it looked clunky. And obviously some of that is like the pressure you're talking about. Not everybody's going to be able to pressure the ball, or I think teams can collapse around the post, because we saw that happen in an exhibition, right?
Well, why wouldn't you?
Yeah.
I mean, if they're going
to take away Udoka by doing that.
He got 4 shots, and he did everything he should have. I mean, Self talked about him going a little slow on the catch a couple of times. Sure, that probably was there, but for the most part, the double team came fast, and if he's forcing it out of that, then you're really hurting the offense. So I think he did everything he should have. He just got limited opportunities because of the way people defended him, and I think you're right. You're going to see that all year, no matter who the team is, no matter what their personnel is. I think you're going to see that. So it's a tricky spot. I mean, I'll be honest with you guys. I thought Silvio would be this guy.
Yeah,
I really did. I thought he was more athletic than he's showing to be. I thought he was more of a guy who could move like that, and I mean, he's talked about that. In the year he sat out, he talked about his face-up game being better. He talked about his jump shot being better. He talked about his handles being better. Well, those are exactly the 3 things you need to play that spot. And
he played less than 8 minutes.
Right.
That was one of the things that I was kind of shocked by from that opener. As many kind of things that stood out, that was probably in my top 3. Like, Silvio barely played.
Right.
I never would have guessed that.
Yeah.
Like you're saying.
He couldn't have. I mean, he couldn't put him back in there. The early run that he got was it was clear that he didn't have it. And he probably wouldn't have put him back in there if not for having to put him in at the 5 when Udoka got foul trouble in the second half. It wasn't like he came back in at the 4. So lots to figure out, man. I mean, I would imagine over the last 48 hours, there have been a lot of, pieces of paper tossed in the garbage and scribbled out things, and that coaching staff trying to figure this out. And maybe they don't do it on pieces of paper. Maybe that's like a Red Auerbach thing.
Maybe they're throwing iPads in the trash.
There you go. That could be. But either way, they've been working on it, and it's going to be interesting. One of the things that I think is so unfortunate for KU is you go into this season with those 3 big men. Everyone in the world looks at that and goes, wow, what a strength, what a luxury. KU has the best front court in the country, or one of them. And the idea there is that you should be able to put Udoka and one of those 2 other guys out there and force opponents to match up with that and say, good luck, we are going to have the advantage inside. And instead, because these guys are struggling to defend on the perimeter, because they're not that high post playmaker like some of those other guys we talked about on offense, instead you're really quickly here looking at a situation where other teams are going to dictate to Kansas how they have to play instead of the opposite. And I think that's a head scratcher, because there's no question that just from a skill set and just physically and talent wise and all that those 3 guys are 3 of their best players. But if you can't find the right ways to use them and they don't fit the game flow and the game plan and the scouting report, you might not be able to play them. So it's going to be really interesting. What do you think on the 2 bigs, Shane?
Yeah, I will say you won't. I mean, every game you won't be facing Trey Jones, who is one of the better on-ball point guard defenders in college basketball. So that'll help, I guess, free up the offense a little bit. And then just going to the Matthew Hurt angle. I think a lot of people talked about it leading up to it, but I mean that was always going to be the way Duke won this game, is by taking advantage of that. But most teams that KU's going to face over the next couple of months won't have a Matthew Hurt at the 4 spot. So maybe you can dictate the style of play with these type of opponents, but you have to learn to win in other ways as well when you do face a team like that.
Yeah, Benton's column was cool because it included some GIFs, and obviously, like you mentioned, it was all about defense and how McCormack and Silvio especially defended the 4. And the very first one, I think it was the first one, was Hurt's first 3-pointer of the game.
Yeah.
Catch on the wing, jab step, jab step, jab step.
Oh, I mean, that was in the second half.
Okay.
Three jab steps.
Yeah. Second half, right. I mean, that is my favorite clip of all time. McCormack's doing what he's got to do.
It's hilarious.
I mean, his stance is there. He's not going to let the guy drive by him. He's down, set in his stance. He's got his hands up. He's contesting. He's ready to close out if he can. And Hurt gives him the jab, and he backs off because he has to. And then I mean, just 3 in a row, and then follows that up by just dotting your I with a 3-pointer. I mean, look, that is the clip you have to watch because it's not a simple situation of, well, McCormack just has to try harder. No,
the effort
he is
was there.
trying everything he's got. He is trying as hard as he can.
The crazy thing to me was like, do they really fear Hurt as like a driver in those situations that much?
Right.
Like, why not just force him to drive?
Yeah, I mean,
because you can be more aggressive. I mean, they were giving him space. They were kind of
good point
in those situations, and that's the part that was a little bit surprising to me because like those jab steps, you should just actually inch up closer every time he does. And see what he can do off the dribble.
Well, 2 things. 1, if he puts it down, you got guards that can dive in and rip it out. 2, if he does drive and gets by you, guess who's waiting? Udoka. Now, I want to talk about that real quick because Udoka is not a shot blocker.
Right.
He's not. I mean, he barely even altered any shots in this game. And this idea that he can be a rim protector, he's talked about it. The coaching staff has talked about it. They obviously want him to be that. He's not that. And I think we saw that the other night, and I think we've seen that throughout his career. I mean, he has his moments, sure. There's no doubt about it. But pay attention to that. I mean, pay attention to how many times Udoka is near the rim and guys still shoot over him and the shot is not affected and they're not deterred. I mean, that's to me, that's a significant thing because if he were just a hair better, I mean, if you're funneling him to a Jeff Withey, that's exactly how you play Matt Hurt. You crowd him. If he puts it down, good luck. I'll block your shot wherever you want to put it, and you're not going to beat us with your 3. I mean, that's exactly how they would play it, but they don't have Jeff Withey back there. They don't have Cole Aldrich back there. So, those are things that aren't news flashes. That's been known, obviously, but I think that was a sort of small but significant thing that also showed up in this game. Again, you're playing the number 4 team in the country.
Yeah,
it's a good team.
You played terribly, and you lost by 2 to a top 5 team.
Yeah.
So I mean, like, well, it's just kind of reminded me. You said silver linings when you were talking. What were you talking about earlier? The
Silver Linings Playbook.
Oh yeah, that movie.
Love that movie.
Okay, but no, when Mark Mangino was here and talked to some reporters at halftime, he said silver linings are for losers.
Yeah, he
moral
trashed
victories are for losers.
He might as well just sent me a text.
Oh yeah, because you had the moral victory column.
Yeah,
he's like putting you on blast.
He's like, I don't want to see any of that around here. And I was like, all right, Mark, sorry, man.
But no, I mean, I think Self would say the same thing. We're sitting here talking about. I just mentioned, hey, you played terribly and you lost by 2 to a really good team.
Right.
No one wants to hear
Who
that.
cares?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Play better and win.
Exactly.
But I do think that's fair. I mean, and it's human nature to look that way. These guys have to look at it that way because they lost, right? So what good does it do Ochai and Devon to go, oh, God, we were terrible. No, instead you have to flip it and you say, look, we played a terrible game. If we played these guys again, we would win. I mean, maybe you wouldn't, but you have to say that.
You have to have that
You have to
attitude.
believe that because the odds of them turning it over, I mean, you'd probably have at minimum 10 fewer turnovers the next time. That's significant, right? And look, Duke also shot, what they shoot, 30-some%. I mean, they shot 36% for the game. I mean,
for 24 from 3. I mean, that's not great.
No. So it's not like Duke couldn't play better either, you know. And part of that was Kansas. Part of that was, KU's defense, KU controlling the glass a little bit and things like that. But that's what's cool about this event. That's what's fun about this style of season kickoff. It's like the 4 premier programs in college basketball, or 4 of the 5, 6, whatever it is, counting, Carolina and Villanova up there. You throw it out, you play one random night in early November, and 2 teams win and 2 teams lose. And year after year after year after year, no matter who it is, the two losing coaches walk away from this thing going, it's early November. This game didn't, this one doesn't have any bearing on the rest of the season. I mean, you might as well just hit record and play and let the two losing coaches say that, whoever they are, because that's what they say and that's what they have to say, and it's also true. So what else jumped out about our first true look at KU? I mean, I think a couple of things that are significant are, number one, this wasn't really our first true look at Kansas because they didn't have Isaiah Moss.
There you go.
And I think he'll help. I don't think I saw this. I wrote this in a blog too. I mean,
the overreactions.
Yeah, man. I mean, I just saw so many people saying, well, when Isaiah Moss is back, we're fine. Everything's fixed. He's going to help a lot. And KU took 9 3-pointers the other night, and he will change that. And they will run plays to make sure that happens, and he will get shots and looks and all of that. But this guy has not played a minute of basketball for Bill Self at Kansas. We know he can play. We know he's a solid player in the Big Ten, but it's not like he's, Devontae Graham or Frank Mason. As soon as they're back, we're fine. I mean, like this guy, he's going to have to find a role, and he's going to have to.
Yeah, he's not even the starter, right?
Yeah, well, he might be.
Okay.
I mean, that's what I want to see. I think, having not seen him at all, I think if he were healthy the other night, the lineup that would have been on the floor, the overwhelming majority of the time, would have been Dotson, Ochai, Moss, Garrett, and Udoka.
Really?
I just think so.
They would have gone 4 guards?
I don't think there's any doubt. I think he would have put Garrett on hurt and said, that's your guy. That's all you have to do. And then Moss spreads the floor with Ochai and Devon being able to do that too, also opening up driving lanes for those 3 other guys, also opening up the fact that then Duke can't double the post. There's no reason to, because you're sticking those guys out on the wings. And if you're Cassius Stanley and you're guarding Ochai and the ball goes down to Udoka, are you going to jump that? Are you going to run down there? No, because then Udoka just flips it back out to your guy, and Ochai's got a rhythm 3-pointer. I mean, I just think that's going to end up being their best lineup. I really do. And that's okay. I mean, that gives them depth everywhere else. McCormack and Silvio can come in and do what they need to do off the bench, pound the glass, be big, and then those freshmen figure it out where they fit and how they fit and what they can do. I just think that Moss is going to help, but I don't think it's automatic that as soon as he's back, everything's fixed. They're going to still have to figure out how they want to play. And again, to just ditch the idea of playing McCormack and Silvio other than in a backup role, I mean, I don't think they're ready to do that. I think they want to still figure out how they can make that work, or if they can. And if they can figure that out, I think they'll ride it for a while. But I just don't think that Moss is going to return, especially off of an injury, and be a 30 minutes a game guy. Maybe toward the end of the season, maybe when things are on the line, that's what you'll see. But right now, I don't see it. What do you guys think? I mean, I think I'm excited to see him. I'm ready for him to be healthy. I want to see what this kid can do. Because he did warm up the other night. I watched him closely. He looked pretty good. I would imagine if that were a tournament game, he would have played. But there's just no reason to push him. So what are your thoughts on the Moss factor?
Yeah, it's interesting to me that you do think that Self would have gone just 4 guards pretty quickly if he had that lineup. And maybe that's true, just because maybe he has more trust in a veteran to be the 4th guy. If you're trying to go with a 4-guard lineup the other night, I mean, one of those guys was going to have to be a freshman. Right. It was going to have to be Brown or Inaruna or Wilson. And Inaruna looked the most comfortable of those guys. I wouldn't say Brown looked uncomfortable, but
no. And I think it's noteworthy that he was the first freshman put in the game. I mean, he still played 4 minutes. Yeah. So it wasn't like he had a huge impact. But again, what's Self all about? Trust. Well, what does he do now? What do we know? That he trusts him because he was the first one he went to. And who knows? Maybe that was situational or circumstantial, but it's certainly been true in the past that's kind of a tell of Self's trust level with you.
Yeah, and obviously it would make sense to use that combination of Udoka or McCormack, or even Silvio at the 5, and then just have your 4 primary guards, including Moss, play around them.
Yeah,
it makes a lot of sense. I'm just curious to see how much they'll do it. I feel like. Do you think Self will adjust the starting lineup at some point in the weeks ahead, or will he stick with 2 bigs? I get the sense he wants to stick with 2 bigs, but he might be forced to make an adjustment if just they can't figure out a way to fix things on both ends.
Yeah, without looking too far ahead to what's on the schedule. I mean, It's hard to know. I mean, obviously, here's the deal. If they're just playing small teams that they can overwhelm with their size, I don't necessarily think he would look at that and go, oh, we'll just ride with two bigs because that'll be easy. I think they need to figure this out. Right? And so, of course, it'll be easy if you're playing Monmouth and they don't have a guy over 6'8", right? I mean, that's gonna be what you do. And I don't know if that's true. I have to look, but it wouldn't surprise me, right? I mean, and so we may be in a situation here coming up where we see what we see is a little deceptive, like, oh, everything's fine. Look at it. It worked. Well, that might not be true. So because I think when it comes down to counting the most, because I think that's where they're going to have to really tinker with the lineup, I wouldn't be surprised if we see it sooner rather than later. I really want to see what he wants to do with Enaruna. You're right. The guy was terrific and poised. He had his moments, too, where he didn't look great. He had a couple of turnovers and still, looked like a freshman playing in a huge game for the first time. But his length, his defense, his poise, all those things, I mean, they could be real assets. I don't want to jump the gun and say he's got starter potential. I mean, but he does. Certainly down the road, but maybe even this year. I mean, Self talked about it after the game that if he can just do this, this, and this, his minutes will go way up. And this, and this was, generally speaking, play aggressive, play in attack mode. And for Self to say that after one game about a freshman and use the words "go way up," I mean that tells you a lot right there. I don't think he'll end up starting, but if Moss can't get healthy and they can't figure it out with the two bigs, there's your answer potentially. So I don't know. I mean, part of me thinks they'll just ride with this because you're right. I do think they want to figure out the two bigs, but the other part of me thinks, well, if they already kind of know that's not going to click, no time like the present to try to tinker with the other stuff and see what you can get. That's where the Moss injury is so significant because you can't really take a stab at the whole picture until you have all your pieces and until he's back. I just don't know that they'll be able to actually look at this thing.
Yeah, I'd be interested to see, what Moss provides on defense. We have seen him in such a limited fashion that I don't know the answer to that. But I would assume that basically comes down to how much time he'll actually be on the floor and how much they can go with that kind of four-guard look. But, with the combination of Ochai, Dotson, and Marcus Garrett, you have three really good defenders there. So I wouldn't imagine they would want to have a liability on the defense end for an extended period of time if that was the case. But maybe that is the case if you have two bigs as well. You have a liability defensively as well.
Yeah, no, that's a good question. And he, take it with a grain of salt. But when I first talked to Moss after he committed to KU, this was the first thing he pointed out. I'm more than a shooter. I can play defense. I like playing defense. I pride myself on it. So, you got to show up, you got to do it, and you got to do it to Bill Self's liking. But at the same time, I don't think that's anything he's going to be scared of or shy away from. I wonder. We'll finish this up with 10 minutes of questions from readers. But real quick before we do, I wonder what your thoughts are. We might have answered a bunch of them, honestly. We've talked a lot about this, but I wonder just briefly, real quick, for both of you, who has looked better to you in the two exhibition games and obviously the Duke game, McCormack or Silvio?
Well, I've seen a lot more of McCormack.
Long pause, heavy sigh.
True. So, yeah, I would have to say McCormack just based on what I've seen. He had those moments, obviously, where he kind of looked like freshman David McCormack a little bit, where he was just going too fast.
Yeah, head spinning. Right, I agree. A couple of them.
Right, but he also had a double-double, didn't he? Or no, just he had 13 boards. I was being
It felt like it. Yeah, it felt like it. Right.
So, he did.
He should have. He shot 7 times.
He did a good job on the glass. I just haven't. I was expecting more of Silvio, but I was also expecting to see him given more opportunities to play. Maybe we'll see that. I don't know. It's just too tough for me based on what I've seen to kind of give either guy an edge.
Right. Now imagine being Self.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
If it's tough for you,
right,
it's got to be tough for him. Although he does have the benefit of seeing practice, but still hard. It's not an easy answer. Not an easy decision. It's tough.
What's really, I'll say McCormack just based off what we've seen. But
also because you love copying Ben.
I love copying Ben. But no, what's really interesting is because Bill Self has talked about how McCormack's the most improved player. entering this year.
Great point.
It doesn't look like that in the exhibition games we've seen and the season opener. That's just 3 games.
Sure.
But like I haven't seen anything that would say he's the most improved player on the team. If anything, Marcus Garrett might be.
Yeah.
Marcus Garrett was going to his left, and Jay Billis was talking about on the broadcast that he was constantly going to his right last year. I mean, and he's shown his 3-point shot in the exhibition game as well. So if anything, he might be the most improved player rather than David McCormack.
I love it. I love that. And when you think improved, you think offense a lot too.
Yeah, that's true.
I thought McCormack was phenomenal on the glass. I thought he went and got every rebound he could get. Obviously, he finished with 13, 3 of them on the offensive glass. When you're comparing the two, I thought he looked like a bad man rebounding, and I thought Silvio looked like he was waiting for the ball to come to him. That's pretty significant. So you're right. I mean, he wasn't perfect, but you're right. I mean, I hadn't thought about the improved line. I mean, that's it's a work in progress. There's no doubt about it. Let's take some questions. We got quite a few of them, and we'll just try to hit them quick and get everybody in there as much as we can. This is from Art Bagels, the OG Bagels on Twitter. And a couple of people asked this question. I love McCormack, but are you worried we went too big and Mitch would have been more helpful on playing defense on the bigs that can stretch the floor? I saw a little bit of this, and people were like, should have played Mitch. Mitch isn't known for his perimeter defense.
He's known, like, what's his greatest skill defensively? Weak side shot blocker?
Yeah, and just being unafraid and willing to fight anybody for anything.
Yeah,
but that doesn't happen on the perimeter.
Great point. I mean, we haven't like seen him. We've seen 3 years of Mitch Lightfoot off the bench, and at no point were we like, oh, this guy's an amazing perimeter defender.
Right.
So that doesn't fix that, but it's a legitimate question because
yeah.
I think obviously the issue is just like you have 4 bigs if you're including Lightfoot, and you might only have one spot. I know because it doesn't seem like they fit.
Yeah. Now you see a little bit more why he's redshirting, right?
Right. Now, ideally, wouldn't you rather like redshirt David McCormack or something like that and have Mitch Lightfoot play with Udoka? This is Udoka's last year.
Sure.
But I mean, obviously David McCormack didn't come here to redshirt. He was a McDonald's All-American, played at Oak Hill.
Right.
Pretty
good stuff.
Yeah. So it's just you never would have guessed, months ago with these 4 guys that there would be such issues. It's
or
strange.
that people would be like, we need Mitch.
Yeah, good point.
Right? I mean, and I'm not saying people are crazy for asking it. You said it's a legitimate question. I just don't think it would have changed anything the other night.
Yeah,
I really don't.
He could maybe be like a little bit of that perimeter 4-guy offensively too. I mean, he's willing to take 3-pointers. I don't know that
we do know that
when he does take 3-pointers.
Yeah, Shane.
Yeah, it's interesting because we've talked about it the whole podcast, but I mean, KU had 28 turnovers and they only lost by 2 points. So it's hard to imagine that, hey, you throw in this player and that's the difference in the game. So I'm not sure, as kind of you guys have alluded to, how much of an impact that makes just by having him out there.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I mean, I think, of course, from the heart standpoint, all that, Mitch would have found a way to fight somebody for an extra possession or saved a turnover or something like that. But if the question is specifically perimeter defense, I don't think he would have saved the day. Our boy Frank Saunders, crossing over to a little hoopage. Welcome to the game, Frank. It's a good question. Why did Jalen Wilson become instantly persona non grata?
Yeah, he barely played.
There's a reason. He jacked a shot out of the flow. He
turned
it over.
Yeah.
He forced it. Yeah, he turned it over, and he got lost on defense. Yeah. All in 2 minutes.
Yeah. So
I don't think they dislike him. I just think on that stage in that game, you can't play that guy.
Yeah, I mean,
maybe give him another chance.
There's a player every single year that we say this about. He checks into the game, he does something self-hates, and then we never see him again for the rest of the game.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, fill in the blank. Kelly Oubre, Cheikh Diallo, Cliff Alexander.
Man, you're on fire.
This is what happens. You know? We shouldn't be surprised.
LeGerald Vick. Oh, wait, he had to play him. There was no depth.
Well,
wouldn't he have set the record, though?
Even Christian Brown forced a bad shot, and he was immediately pulled, and he was limited as well.
It was an awful shot. Yeah, it was an awful shot. I mean, again, that's just freshmen figuring it out. There was no reason to take that shot. He just got sped up and lost sight of where he was and what he was doing, and then he just decided, well, the best thing I can do here is just jack it. No. I mean, you missed the rim on the other side, so I think that I don't think that Jalen Wilson's done by any means. I think that he'll he'll have an opportunity to ease into a nice role, especially if they do have to end up playing 4 guards with a perimeter type 4 player, and he could be a huge factor in that.
I mean, when you think about that, thinking about a modern 4, he has the frame for it, right? Does he have the game for it yet?
Ooh,
he might. Oh wow, dropping bars.
Make a poster or a T-shirt, man.
But
we'll get rich.
He looks like the type of guy that could be that ideal stretch for next year.
Yeah,
it'd be great for KU if he can develop in these next few months to be that guy. Even if you don't trust him to start, but be that guy that where you can bring him off the bench and have a four guard lineup that has some size to it.
Big time. There's no doubt that's a possible role for him. And I should note that Frank Saunders also said in a separate, pretty much in the same time. Can we pull Mitch's red shirt just to make KU basketball Twitter slightly more bearable? So good looking out there. There's a point to that, but I don't think you'll have to worry about Mitch and prison Mitch.
Well, Mitch should tweet during the game.
That would be
more bearable.
epic.
Yeah, they should just let him have his phone on the bench. He's not playing. It's fine.
Just tweeting live reactions from everybody.
That would be epic. When I asked for questions, our guy here, Kurt Rettig, wrote back, said, not really, don't have any. Once Moss is healthy, the whole rotation will be different. We kind of already talked about that. He's not wrong, but I love that he decided to tell us I don't have any questions. So thanks, Kurt. Good stuff. Randy Maxwell followed that up with said the biggest question is, when can Moss play? There's a better question. Mm-hmm. That's a good question.
And from what you saw, it seems like he's close, right?
Yeah, it does. I don't think they'll force him Friday night. It wouldn't surprise me if he played 5 minutes just to give it a test run or something like that, kind of like he did in that second exhibition game. But I think they are in a situation here where they're probably going to be able to beat Greensboro without him. So why not? It's sort of the Patrick Mahomes thing. Let him get all the way healthy, and then you move forward knowing he's 100%. And yes, Shane, I see your face. I compared Isaiah Moss to Patrick Mahomes. He's the freaking MVP, man. That was a good face, though. Let's see. Who else do we have? Okay, Evan Phillips, a good question. Benton, you can take this one real quick. Could you talk about why fans shouldn't be giving up on playing two bigs just yet, please?
Well, I think it's just because, if you look, that combination played obviously the majority of the game, and even though it was not pretty to watch, I mean, it actually was mostly effective. I mean, it wasn't like that team was getting run off the floor.
Good point.
And those two guys, or even for KU's sake, hopefully Silvio can become one of those two guys whenever they need him to be. If you're playing two bigs, you can dominate the glass.
Sure. Well, they were both out there during KU's 14-0 run.
Right.
When KU built a 9-point lead, should have gotten bigger. Yep. I mean, you're right. And I guarantee if you're going and listening to a Duke podcast or a Duke blog or whatever, they were not enjoying having to figure out how to guard Silvio and McCormack in the game at the same time. Now, they had success with it, but I'm sure it wasn't fun. I'm sure Coach K wasn't like, this is easy.
Right.
This is awesome. No, like Sheck Diallo, right? It's so easy.
This is the Sheck Diallo podcast.
It is.
He
it's
always
so good.
Gets brought up.
He has to. Let's go with a couple more questions then. But yeah, I do agree. I think you're right. I don't think it's time to give up on it yet.
I mean, teams can still win in college basketball with two bigs. It just has to fit the rest of your personnel. And I think that's the issue they're trying to figure out. Like, I mean, when you think about the great, like, Gonzaga teams or UNC teams, a lot of times they just have massive big men that they just dominate the glass with. And that's a huge part of why they're successful. Big time.
That's a great comparison, and you can go places with that for sure. Let's see. Zach, Jayhawk fan 84. Will the offense really look different this year? It looked a lot like last year to me. It's a good question.
Yeah.
I think, if anything, you might have had more shooters last year because you had Vic. I mean,
for a while.
Yeah.
Until you didn't.
And then I don't know. I don't know. I don't think it'll look anything like last year. Number one, because everything that they did that had success last year was involving Dedrick Lawson.
That's true.
And he's gone. And they don't have
anybody.
Have
a big like that anymore as far as what you're doing offensively.
Yeah, so I think it will in time is probably the fair answer, right? I think
and they would like to play through Udoka inside if possible. They would like to get him touches because he's a monster human being who can just turn and dunk, ideally. So, I mean, that's going to be a lot of the offense as long as he's healthy, is finding ways to get him the ball where he's catching it, 5 feet from the rim or something like that, not necessarily having to show off his ball handling ability to get to the paint and then traveling as he gathers,
Yeah, no, so. I agree. I mean, I just think that it blew my mind. I was flying home from New York and I'm looking at the box score and I'm trying to figure out what I can write. And I didn't really notice, but 4 shots. I mean, again, Duke defended it well, and they were a big reason for the 4 shots, and Udoka actually played a pretty heady game. But 4 shots for your preseason Big 12 Player of the Year, an All-American type candidate, you've got to have more than that. Any final thoughts as we move into the next 2 weeks? Thanks for the questions. We didn't get to all of them, but Benton's got to get out of here. He's got an exciting story. Keep an eye out. He's going to do a real live interview.
I'm going to interview a human.
Humans. It's going to be great. So we got to get Benton out of here, and we've talked all about all the Duke stuff. What do you want to see in the next 2 weeks, real quick? They play both, Friday and Friday, I think again until they're fully healthy, we won't know exactly what this team is or can be. But do you think we can see it in the next 2 weeks? And what are you going to be looking for specifically, Shane?
Well, not 28 turnovers, I would assume.
It's a good start. That's going to be my first key in the game day breakdown tomorrow. Yeah, I promise you that.
And specifically, what we kind of talked about at the beginning of the podcast is just the turnovers in transition. And even if it's not turnovers, even if it works well, as long as it's not like it was when Ochai throws it late and makes a late decision and still ends up with a layup. As long as it's the good play, I think that's more important. Looking at this team making better plays in transition.
Good, Benton.
I'm curious to see what this team ends up doing with De Sousa, because especially if you start leaning more to like four guard lineups or 4 perimeter players and playing 1 big inside, where are his minutes coming?
Yeah.
And I think he can be an effective player, and I think that he will be. But it's just early in the season. I don't know. I mean, obviously he hasn't played in basically
forever.
18 months or whatever.
Yeah.
So maybe that is part of it for him. But I think he has what you want in a big man. I mean, obviously he's not perfect. He doesn't have the perimeter shot like you were talking about, or the great ball handling skills or anything like that. But he's such a high energy guy and such a guy that can just come in and maybe give you a jolt with that, like a Mitch Lightfoot on steroids or something like that. I just want to see like what he becomes for this team.
I like that, and I think that's right, man. I think there's so much still to see with this group. I think I think that not just one thing I'm really going to look for is what happens with these 3 freshmen over the next couple of weeks. Does one of them, is it Inaruna that emerges as, okay, there's sort of a pecking order here now, and I'm the lead guy of the freshmen. And obviously, does Isaiah Moss come back healthy? That's a huge one we've already talked about. But yeah, I think watching what Self and company do with the big man situation is so significant. For me, though, I really think the biggest thing that I'll keep an eye on is this team is so talented. They have so many quality pieces of just athleticism and good basketball players, and there's a lot to like. But I think right now these guys are really still trying to figure out the reason to play, if you will. I mean, like, look, Devon Dotson came back for his sophomore year, almost left, wants to go pro, is ready, in his mind, and there's nothing wrong with that. He's, sort of still thinking about showcasing his game, right, for the next level. Udoka has been doing that the last couple of years, trying to stay healthy, trying to show what he can do. I think that there's Silvio trying to show that he, this revenge tour thing, right, that everybody's talking about. The freshmen trying to show that they belong and that they can play. There's still so many guys on this roster that are just, I think, need to just take a step back and go, okay, the reason I'm here is to make Kansas the best team in the country. And that needs to be my singular focus. And if I do that, everything else will fall in line. I'll get attention from scouts. I'll get national attention. I'll put up numbers. I'll do all that stuff that's going to benefit my future. But right now, they all need to take a page out of Marcus Garrett's book and say, this is why we're here, to do whatever this team needs and to play Kansas basketball and to do what Bill Self needs. And I think that's a good spot for them to be in, because Marcus Garrett is exactly that. He's terrific at it, and he's a hell of a leader in his own right. And I think Self can point to that guy and Ochai to some degree as just examples of, look, man, these are the guys you want to emulate. Don't worry about the NBA. Don't worry about what scouts are telling you. Don't worry about who's watching. Just be your best for KU. And if you do that, we'll get on the same page fast, and we'll be rolling, and teams won't be able to catch up with us. I do think they have astronomical potential still, and there's no reason to think differently after one 2-point loss after 28 turnovers. So it's going to be interesting the next couple of weeks, and then they go to Maui. But, we'll see what happens between now and then. For Shane Jackson, who was pretty quiet this episode, I'm not going to lie.
Sorry.
He's still excited about that Ravens win.
That's right.
Yeah, no doubt. For Shane Jackson and Benton Smith, who's got to go interview a human, I'm Matt Tate. Thanks for checking out the KU Sports Hour. We'll talk to you guys again real soon on another episode.